Good afternoon and welcome to the Pinecrest Business Association Member Spotlight. Today I am joined with Vanessa Vazquez of Vasquez de Lara Law Group. Vanessa's been on here with us before, so welcome back, Vanessa. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And a big thank you to Grant and Michael Miller for hosting us on the show, and to Tommy for producing us and making us look so good over here. Before we get started with talking about the law group, why don't you give us a little bit of background of who you are?
Sure. So I've been a practicing family attorney for going on 18 years now, which is hard to believe that it's been that long.
You don't look old enough to have been practicing for 18 years.
Yep. So I have my own firm, and I've had it already for about 8 years. So it's been a labor of love. And we have an amazing group of ladies and one gentleman that is our college intern. But we have an amazing group, and we love providing family law services to the community. We make sure that they are well represented in other issues related to family court.
So are you a woman-based law firm on purpose, or did it just happen that way?
So interestingly enough, it has just happened that way. I think that ultimately the people that gravitate to family law are really, more the women. Mm-hmm. The men tend to not want to work for other women, I think, in family law, and they kind of start their own law firms. So it's one of those things where it's not purposeful, but once we've been creating it, it feels really powerful. So I think we keep attracting women. So it just keeps growing and growing and growing.
That's fantastic. I think that's fantastic. So with the law group, things are starting to open up with people getting vaccinated. So what is happening at Vasquez de Lara?
So it's interesting because before pandemic, we used to do a lot of live lunch and learns, a lot of live events, and we really transitioned to virtual events when pandemic started. And we've been doing our monthly lunch and learns and CLEs virtual, and we are now starting to explore going live. So we actually had a virtual lunch and learn yesterday with 3 speakers generally for the legal community to be able to learn about different things related to running a law firm. And we've got another one coming up in 2 weeks, which is another CLE about using of counsel labor. But what I'm most excited about is at the end of the month, we're hosting a charcuterie board class. I love charcuterie. I love saying charcuterie.
And it's a word you have to master, right?
And I did a virtual class, and I thought, this is amazing. So we actually planned one, and we sort of did it as a hybrid event where we're actually sold out of our live tickets, and we're having sort of a live version in the office while we're all on with the teacher who's virtual, and everybody else who joins us, it's going to be virtual as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to have a little bit live and a little bit virtual.
I know I saw it and I wanted to join it, but I'm out of town that night. But next time for sure, because I too love a charcuterie board. So, you talked about how you've adapted with organizations. How have you adapted with clients over the past year? A lot of things have changed of how we meet. Obviously, we have definitely a glass wall between us right now.
I think before pandemic, most people didn't even know what Zoom was. So now it's so prevalent that we will right off the bat ask clients, do you want a live meeting? Do you want a Zoom meeting? Do you want a phone meeting? So it's something that, that a lot of our clients have adapted to and have really appreciated being able to do that, because then you don't have to leave work. You don't have to park. You don't have to make arrangements. You just find a quiet corner, find your phone, even go in the car, put on some earbuds, and then, you're able to communicate with us in a way that feels a lot more personal than phone, but where you're able to, get that face-to-face connection. So we've had a lot of people coming back live, socially distanced. We have a pretty big conference room, but we've had a lot of clients being able to take advantage of that Zoom option.
Do you think that's here to stay with meetings or client meetings, but also court hearings?
I absolutely think that it's here to stay. There was actually an article, I want to say today, in the Sun Sentinel that talked about, it was a family law attorney talking about, the benefits to family law clients in Zoom court. And, the rumors are that some of it is going to stay. When you consider, we're down here in Pinecrest, Kendall, Dadeland, and when you consider driving to downtown, which for a 9 a.m. hearing, you got to leave at 8 a.m. Then you count
at the latest.
Yeah. And you got to count for parking. and you got to figure out what to do with your kids, because maybe your kids start school at 9 and you got to leave for court at 8. So you got to figure out, daycare. Then you have to sit around and wait for your case to be called, because maybe there's a bunch of cases on the calendar. So something that, theoretically is a literal 5-minute hearing. This morning, I had a literal 5-minute hearing, would take you minimum 2 hours, because driving, parking, waiting, and coming back. So my client for today was billed for 5 minutes instead of being billed for 2 hours. So if you consider, any attorney's billable rate, that's a massive amount of savings. So, we really think that, especially for the short things like that, the 5-minute hearings, the hearings that are just with the lawyers and not the clients, that it's here to stay. And, that's the rumors that we're hearing. So we're really hoping that that's true.
It's just so much more efficient. Cost efficient and time efficient to handle it that way.
For sure.
So we just got past spring break. I know we both went skiing, right? And before we know it, summer is going to be here. So what type of issues happens with family law during the summer? Do you see an uptick of issues going on?
For sure. Usually whenever the kids are on break is when, for some reason, parents tend to go a little bit off the reservation. And we literally just had a hearing, a follow-up hearing today for a case that we that came in right after spring break, because the child was sent to Texas and dad didn't want to send her back.
Oh no.
And there's a court order and school started, and apparently he lives kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So she wasn't even able to really log into Zoom. And then we had FSAs this week. So, we were able to get into court, and within, 24 hours, the judge said child has to be back in Miami in 24 hours. So it's really something that we see a lot more happening, especially when the parents are not both in Miami, where a parent sends a child and then the other parent says, well, I'm not going to send the child back. And then you kind of got to get into court and, and all that stuff. So vacations seem to bring out sort of the, the something in the parents that is unfortunate, but you really have to make sure that you're getting into court right away, because if you have the right paperwork, the relief is quick. But sometimes there isn't even any paperwork. We'll have clients that, oh, well, I sent my child and dad was supposed to send her back and dad's not sending her back. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the court order? Oh, we don't have a court order. We've been doing it by agreement. I'm like, okay, let me see what we can do now. Because unfortunately, it's not an emergency when there's no court order.
Right. So on the same topic of, parental disagreements, I imagine that now there's probably going to be a lot of disagreements and issues coming up with vaccinations, getting the kids vaccinated, even taking COVID precautions, because everybody's different. So have you seen and experienced anything with that?
We've been seeing a lot of it. There was that big case last year with the doctor that the child, her child was taken away because the ex said, well, she's an emergency room doctor and it's dangerous and she shouldn't have our child. From big cases like that to just small issues like vaccination, there's a lot of parents out there that are not going to want to get their kids vaccinated. And, the reasons are just as good as the parent that does want them vaccinated. So it's something where when you have shared parental responsibility, which is sort of the legal term that allows parents to make those decisions for their kids, you have to come to an agreement. And if there's no agreement, unfortunately, you have to go to the court for the court to be the tiebreaker. So we're going to be seeing a lot of cases, I think, and we've already started seeing them where parents have actually violated shared parental responsibility and gotten the child vaccinated when they knew for a fact that the other parent was absolutely not okay with the child being vaccinated, the child that even already had COVID. So, the parent that didn't want it was like, well, our child's already had it. I don't feel the need to, to reinforce that with a vaccine that I'm not necessarily in agreement with. And the other parent, basically was like, I don't care. And got the child vaccinated. So we're going to be seeing, I'm sure a lot of those cases, because it's unfortunate, but, there's such a, some parents are just like yin and yang, right? And when you're married, that works, to your advantage, where you're sort of evening each other out. Mm-hmm. But when you're not married now, those two parts kind of don't mix, kind of like water and vinegar.
Yes.
And you end up, not being able to get that cohesive decision. And unfortunately, the way that Miami-Dade courts handle that is the courts have to be the tiebreaker.
Really? So I imagine COVID has also affected time sharing with, virtual school and kids not necessarily going to school all the time. How does that affect child support? So if your time sharing schedule has changed, or, does that affect the parental rights and responsibilities and the amount of child support that's paid?
So it's actually something that, that we're really seeing a lot of, either because the parent has lost employment or because their income has been reduced, or like you're saying, where the kids are maybe in school and now the schedule is, has been a little bit different because maybe one parent who didn't have the majority of the time has the ability to handle school virtually while the other parent maybe doesn't. So there's so many factors that go into child support that, that we have been seeing a lot of what's called post-judgment modifications, which is when you have a final judgment, you've got an order from a court, but you're going back to court because there's been a change in circumstances that now you need the court to come up with a new order. And child support is always modifiable. So you can always go back to court. You can always give the court new information. Hey, my income has changed, or my job has changed, or, our schedule has changed with the kids. So that's something that definitely affects the numbers and definitely affects what the parents should be, spending or using or paying.
And are these temporary modifications, or is this something that the court says, okay, well, for 9 months, you're going to, it's going to change to this, or is it modified until you go back to court to change it again?
So it really depends on the circumstances. If it's something where maybe you've been furloughed, but you still have your job, you might need a temporary abatement, or you might need something temporary. But if you lost your job in March of last year and we're now in April and you're still not employed and you've been applying everywhere, you might at that point need a permanent modification because you cannot see that light at the end of the tunnel that says, okay, well, at some point I'm going to get a job. And you might ultimately end up having to open your own business or trying to do some kind of, gig economy job like an Uber or a Shipt or something like that. So it really depends on whether it's something that looks like it might be temporary in nature, or if it's something that, that looks a little bit more permanent. Something that's part of child support that I think really changed for a lot of people during pandemic is care, childcare, daycare, aftercare. Those numbers are typically built into your child support. And if you stopped using any care because you don't want your kids exposed, then
or it's not even available.
Or that it's not even available. Exactly. Nobody went to camp last year. Nobody did aftercare last school year. And a lot of schools, didn't have aftercare when school year started last year. Some have slowly kind of brought it back, but there's still a lot of schools that don't. So ultimately, if your care was built into your child support, whether you're the paying parent or not, that's something that really changes your numbers. And if the other parent is unwilling to sort of recognize, okay, well, yeah, we're no longer spending $400 a month on care, you still need to pay me that money, then that's the kind of situation where we would need to bring it back to the court's attention and say, well, now there's no longer care. We need to make sure that we drop those $400 from the child support.
And a shout out to Juan and Carolina. Thank you for watching. Juan says that you guys are the best family law attorney in Miami. So thank you, Juan. So still on this child support topic. So stimulus payments.
Yeah.
How does that play into child support? And so I think it's based on who claimed that child in 2019, who gets the stimulus payments, correct?
Yeah, so it's been something that we've seen a lot of calls, a lot of emails to our office about he took my stimulus, or we separated, but he's got the money, he won't give it to me, I've got the kids, what's going on? So it's really one of those things where when the stimulus bill passed, the first one was actually attachable and garnishable. I don't think that's a word, but garnishable for purposes of child support. But subsequent stimulus payments, they actually did make an exception, for them not to be garnished, because the intent was not to pay a debt. And unfortunately, once you owe that child support and you're behind, it does become sort of like a debt. And the point wasn't necessarily to pay off your debts, but to be able to help you keep the lights on or pay the rent, etc. So we saw that with the first one where it was garnishable before it even got to you. And the subsequent ones, it hasn't been. But if you are still married, even if you're separated, those are marital monies and they need to be divided equally. And if they're not divided, then they're going to be divided in your divorce. So really the best case scenario for most people is just to, amicably resolve it and amicably, split that money, because ultimately it's not unfortunately, it's not enough money to make it worth the while to pay an attorney to go into
Correct.
court to get you the money back. So it's one of those things where we sort of have to try to get people to work through it, be reasonable, be kind to one another, if that's even possible.
We hope it is, right? It's not necessarily all the time.
Yep.
So it sounds like the pandemic has made your law firm even more busy than it was. And I know you're a busy lady from knowing you personally. So is the firm growing throughout all of this?
We definitely have been growing. We've brought on another associate, earlier this year. We have two amazing law clerks from the University of Miami Law School. Go you. That are graduating now and are actually going to be, studying for the bar and taking the bar, and they're coming back as associates once they take the bar in July. We've brought on some additional virtual staffing. So, our firm's been growing, and I think now we're at we're like at 13 employees. So we've
That's
really
fantastic.
been, continuing to grow.
That's fantastic. So I know you've been very busy, but what are you doing for fun? What's going on in Vanessa's life?
What fun! What time? With two teenage kids, it's hard to find time for yourself. But like many families for spring break, we did kind of take some time and go spend it in the outdoors. And we went up to Park City and I took the kids skiing, so that was a lot of fun. And the kids keep us busy. They do flag football, so every weekend we're watching and playing flag football. We are, we're continuing to enjoy sort of like the outdoors. I think that the one of the big things in our family for pandemic has been really kind of getting back into nature and not wanting to be, in places that are indoors. So I think we've spent more beach time since pandemic started than we have, at least local beaches. Matheson Hammocks Park and going down to South Beach when it's not spring break. And, we've really tried to kind of spend more time outdoors and more time together as a family.
Yeah, it's actually been nice to be able to spend a lot of time outdoors. Obviously now it's going to start getting warmer, but we've had a really nice time spending time outdoors and even just going for walks around the neighborhood. You've gotten to know so many more neighbors throughout all of this. It's actually been nice in some ways.
Yeah.
So how else?
Once the heat starts,
I know that we're all going to be back locked up inside.
Like,
yes, fans, please, fans. How else are you involved in the community?
So obviously we're on the board together for the Pinecrest Business Association, and that's such an amazing community organization, from helping out other organizations to helping the businesses in our community to be able to continue growing, continue networking. We've got our in-person meeting next week, so if you've got a business, you definitely need to make sure that that you're joining us. And I'm also on the board of the Coral Gables Bar Association. And, the last time I was here, I was talking to you about my own personal project, which is the Supreme Scholars Foundation. Unfortunately, we lost my little brother last year to gun violence, and we tried to channel that into a positive, something that speaks positively to the community, so that his life is memorialized not in how he died, but in the kind of person that he was when he was alive. And we gave our first round of scholarships in the fall, and that was really amazing. And we had an amazing fundraiser at the end of last year, and we are gearing up to fundraise again. Unfortunately, the anniversary of his death is now in May, so we're hoping to instead of channeling that grief to
positive
grief,
things.
we're trying to channel that into something positive for those around us. So we're, definitely stay tuned. Check us out on Facebook, Supreme Scholars Foundation. We're going to be, doing some events and fundraising for that, and we're going to be hosting a memorial in Orlando for Ricky's death.
And if people need to get in contact with you, how do they reach you? What's your website?
So we've got our website, which is familylawprotection.com. We're on all the social medias like Facebook, because you probably might be watching this on Facebook. And that's Vasquez de Lara Law Group on Facebook. We've got Instagram. We've got Twitter. We've got LinkedIn. We are all over the World Wide Web.
And if they want to give you a call, what's your phone number to the law firm?
Our phone number is 305-596-9951.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. It's always a wonderful conversation with you. We always have a great time. And a shout out to Vero for watching as well. Thank you for watching, everybody out there in Facebook land and joining us today. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions for Vanessa or for the law firm, please, give them a call or reach out to them online. As Vanessa mentioned, our luncheon is next Tuesday, April 20th at Evelyn Greer Park. You can go to pinecrestbusiness.com to register for the luncheon if you haven't already. We are still following all CDC and VOP guidelines. So we're staying safe. We're limiting it to 40 people. But it is nice to get out there and network and see our peers and see our friends that have local businesses and support them. And, it's about locals doing business with locals and supporting each other. And, obviously we drink the Kool-Aid and we're there every month to do this. And
Definitely.
we have an amazing speaker on mindfulness. We brought her back. She had joined us a couple years ago and she is an amazing speaker. So please join us if you can. And thank you for watching. And we will see you next week, Thursdays at 1.